It's like Contact, but just no Jodie Foster. Said it's Amy Adams. And it's sacrilegious of me to say, but I think it's better than Contact. We saw Arrival. So it's time for Good or Bad.
Priority 1. What do they want? Where are they from? You'll be reporting to me, but you'll be working with him when you're in the show.
That's what they call him, the UFO.
That's right, we saw Arrival, the 2016 sci-fi film by Denis Villeneuve, Quebec-born, I think, Ontario.
Yes,
Canadian.
He's very French-Canadian.
Very French-Canadian. Famous, noted director of Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario, and a couple other things. But those are the big ones.
Yeah,
really good
bad,
films.
yeah.
I've not. It's literally the first movie of his that I've seen, but I've heard great things about Sicario and Prisoners.
I just got to get into it.
Yeah.
So Hawkeye and Lois Lane are making first contact with aliens.
Yeah.
Who communicate exclusively through coffee ring mugs.
Yes.
Coffee
So
mug rings.
let's talk initially before we get way too into it. I wanted to get to spoilers at some point because this is a really tough movie to talk about without spoiling.
We're gonna have to.
So, but I just initially, real quick, before we get to any spoilers, I just want to kind of briefly give my opinion on the film. I love this movie.
This was a film that did what this is the better executed and produced version of what Spooky House did to you.
No,
it found those heartstrings and it was
to an extent. What it did is it's exactly, and this sounds not pretentious. It's exactly my kind of movie. Like I like movies. I like things. I'm a sucker for clever. I think this movie does some clever things. So I'm a sucker for clever.
Debatable.
Well, whatever. There's plenty of we can debate it in a minute, but I think it does clever things. I'm a sucker for like heady sci-fi, like bullshitty, big question sci-fi. I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. I'm not saying
which is why you probably hated Prometheus so much.
One of the reasons I hated Prometheus.
One of my favorite ones is actually Star Trek First Contact.
Yeah, I really like First Contact too. I think the TNG movies are underrated personally, but they're not all great. I let me dial it back a little bit. Yeah, there are some stinkers in there, but
Nemesis.
Yeah, there are some stinkers in there, but I think in general they're underrated. Anyways, that's beyond the point. I really love this movie. I thought it did a lot of really interesting things. I thought it was beautiful. It was shot.
It was
beautifully
it's gorgeous.
I love. Sorry, go ahead.
If I do have one complaint, it's that every fucking shot that's indoors is dark as fuck.
That's the thing, and I thought it was interesting. And I guess I should have looked up who the cinematographer was for this. It's the guy who's shooting. Oh no!
Hell or High Water.
He's shooting. No. He's shooting. Han Solo, the Han Solo standalone movie. The guy who shot this.
I can expect every
dark interior.
Dark.
But I thought that was really interesting, and I guess that's maybe becoming a new trend again. Is that it was like all natural light. Like there was so many shots you could tell. It's like there's no extra lights going on here. It's literally whatever you see in the environment.
Which is beneficial now because cameras, their sensitivity
good enough,
to light is. They're to that point.
Like there was that one scene, and this isn't a spoiler, where it's like really early morning, and Amy Adams and Hawkeye are sitting outside. Jeremy Renner are sitting outside on a truck talking to each other, and it's like you can barely see them.
That's amazing.
But it's literally like it's like I can't imagine a movie with this budget going like, we're not gonna light any of our scenes. We're just gonna shoot it.
Also, I was very impressed that they did a 2-hour-long alien-based Chevy commercial.
Yeah, they did. They did get
there are so many fucking white Chevy Silverados.
Yeah, it didn't detract from me, but yes, they did. That was where they paid for some of this movie. But so I thought it was beautiful. I loved how it was paced. I tweeted at one point, or said something on Facebook about how I loved it, but that it was slow, as a warning to people. And I got some backlash for that, from a guy. And I clarified, it's not that it's slow. I don't think it's slow. It's just I wanted to make sure people know what you're getting into. Going into the movie.
Put it this way, the conflict doesn't really come up until
the very end of the movie. Yeah, and it's just it takes its time. I was engrossed the whole time, and I was never bored. But it's not, and I think the trailers did a fairly good job of portraying it as the right way. But I just wanted to make sure nobody saw the trailers and go, "This is going to be like this fun, cool
Well, yeah.
sci-fi action movie.
There was
and it's
definitely
not.
A point where it was going slow, and I was like, montage. We need a fucking montage. Where's the montage?
There is a montage.
And then the montage
Yeah.
happened. It's like, yay!
Yay, montage. But yeah, so it's slow, but it's not slow. It takes its time. I think it's well paced.
Put it this way: the guy who shot this, he doesn't make a boring shot.
No. Every shot,
everything
has a purpose.
Yeah,
and
it
it
gorgeous.
It portrays. I love this, and this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailers. That opening shot, and I only caught it because the opening shot of the movie pans across the ceiling to the windows on her house, and it's literally almost identical. And I just thought it was very cool visual symmetry between the shot when they're walking into the spaceship and it pans across the black ceiling onto that white wall where the aliens are behind. You know, it's that just that visual symmetry stuff. It's just a fucking gorgeous movie. Visual symmetry, I think that's a phrase. I went to film school, technically. But I just thought, so yeah, gorgeous, well acted. Everybody does a really good job. I don't think anybody stuck out as a bad actor or had any really moments where they
Maybe Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah, I thought he played his role well.
I mean, he played his role well, but his role was not. It didn't give itself to Forrest Whitaker.
No, that's true. He didn't. That could have been a lot of. I also think this is true. Amy Adams crushed it in this movie.
Oh yeah, she destroyed it.
She crushed it. I think Jeremy Renner's role could have been played by. He did good, but it could have been played by anybody. And same for Forrest Whitaker's role. It could have been played by other people. Amy Adams it was her role. She destroyed it.
There are days that define your story beyond your life. Like the day they arrived.
Okay, so we're about to get into spoilers, but just real quick to wrap up kind of the negatives, here's my negatives without spoilers. I think some of the how to say this without spoiling anything. Some of the things, the way the story gets resolved in the third act were a little easy, maybe, if the word is I was looking for.
This was definitely you're at the end of the script and you're like, all right, how the fuck do we get out of this situation?
It worked for me within the narrative and the theme of the movie. It worked, but it also at the same time I was like, well, that's a little silly. But within what the movie was doing, it worked. But I had a little bit pulled back from that. And then there was also a couple moments where some of the dialogue, the actual delivered fine, but just was a little clunky-ish.
Some of it didn't seem very human. Almost.
Yeah. Then maybe that's what it was. It felt a little weird. Some of the early stuff, but with just when they're first getting. Anyway, so it's the spoiler side. There's a couple little minor things that bothered me, but overall, this movie is good. I mean, I think you would say it's good.
Definitely.
You have problems with it that we're going to get into in spoilers, but I super recommend this movie. Go out and see it because this is, again, we say this sometimes, like with Kubo, which I know you love that one probably more than this. This and like Kubo, these are movies that
I love Kubo because it was simpler,
right? But these are movies that need to be made, and we need to support movies like this, and it's not going to make as much money.
This isn't $100 and something million blockbuster budget. No. This is a very condensed budget. Yeah, and they're still making films that way outblow most of the other crap that's out there. Yeah,
so I just go support a movie like this. Go see it. It's still in theaters. It's only been out like 2 weeks or something like that.
It's the film, like you said, Kubo, like Hell or High Water, like this. These are the films that you need to
go see in theaters because these are the things where if you don't go support them, they're not going to keep making them as many, which it's already kind of trailed off a little bit. But you gotta support movies like this because they're amazing, and filmmakers need to be, filmmakers making art like this need to keep making art. Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's get into spoilers. Go see the movie. It's fucking great.
Every 18 hours, a door opens up. That's where we go in.
All right, let's get into spoilers. So the movie is about
aliens.
It's not about aliens.
It's not about aliens?
I mean, it is.
It is. It's about communication.
I think what this movie's about. This is interesting. Here's why this movie made me cry. Yes, this movie made me cry. I cried the last 10 minutes of this movie. The thing that I love.
I was not as moved.
The thing I loved about this movie, and I think the take-home message and why it connected with me so well. I thought it was it's a unique message that you don't see a lot in film. At least not in the films I've seen. Probably a bunch of old French stupid movies.
Francois Truffaut, we're looking at you.
Yeah. But what this movie is about is the futility of human life, but it still matters. And that, so the whole big thing at the end, we find out that she can see the future. That's the big twist, is the thing that was the flashback was actually the future, which I think I figured out pretty early in the film. But so that we find out at the end, she has to make this decision. Does she want to, and again, spoilers, be with Jeremy Renner, even though she knows they're going to have a kid and that kid's going to die of cancer? And
it's not cancer, but yeah.
Whatever.
It's super disease. That's all we know.
Whatever. Okay. Fucking cancer. Whatever. Die of some disease when she's like a teenager. And we find out that she says yes, even though she knows that's going to happen. And the reason she does it, and this is why it stuck with me so well, is this idea that even if you knew that this is, because it is, all of our lives are going to end with us dying. Every single one of them. We're going to get philosophical here for a second.
Better to have loved and lost than never to have
to
loved
an extent, but none of us are getting out of this shit alive. And even though she knows that her kid is going to die in 16 years, to her, it is still worth it to have those moments with the people that she loves, with this kid, with her daughter, that, you know, and they have all, and they do a good job, I think, in the movie of showing us all these really lovely, tender moments between mother and daughter, and between Jeremy Renner and her, once we figure out that's what it is, where she goes, yes, you know what, I'm still gonna say yes, even though I know how this ends, and it doesn't end well. It's still worth it to have all of these other moments. And now it just really, yeah, I know, but it's done so well, I think, in the movie, that it just worked for me, and I was like, that's a message I personally really like. I think it's a good message. I think it's a good thing to remind yourself of, and remind, you know, that, and we're getting philosophical and sappy here, or I am. You're fucking just sitting there staring at me.
I agree with all that. Although my want to put logic into this film far outweighs that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna let you go, and then I'm gonna tell you why you're wrong.
Okay, so it's not really time travel, but it kind of is. Mm-hmm. Spoilers are that aliens have come to deliver this formula almost, or this formula for language in order to interpret time. Yeah. So that in 3,000 years, the humans can help this alien race. Yeah, they say, we're here to help you now so that you can help us 3,000 years from now, because they don't think in real time. Okay,
they think in non-linear time.
Why can't, if that be the case, why couldn't the aliens from the past figure out what's happening in the future and then fix it in the past before it happens?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. You always get into weird things when you start doing time distortion.
Oh, no, don't worry. No, we're going to keep on this. We're going to keep on this for a second. All right, so to our knowledge, she's the only one who knows, Amy Adams is the only one who knows how to interpret time like this. As a professor of language, it's her best interest, and I think her character would agree with this, to teach this to others. Mm-hmm. That's fucking bad. Because you're going to have people who are going to interpret the past. Like, is this an infinite number of parallel realities? For instance, is the knowledge that Jeremy Renner has, is he going to use that in order to better his life? Are we working off Back to the Future, where there's parallel universes? Does everybody have their own parallel universe as a result of interpreting time? Or is everything in a linear path that's structured? I know, right? Example, if Forrest Whitaker's character had his own if he was able to learn this, had his own interpretation, would he just think back in time to the point where he's like, oh, hey, people in this hearing of the UN, I know this thing. I don't know really how I know this thing, but the thing happened where I learned it from the future. Let's do this thing. And then everybody else on the board is like, well, I learned that thing too, because I thought of it in the future as well. See?
Okay. Yes.
See, the problem with that is you do one of two things. Either everybody's omnipresent to everything, as a result of everybody knowing time. And if everything works like it's supposed, how it's interpreted in this film, then eventually everybody will know everything,
Right.
because everybody exceeds knowledge through every aspect of time.
Right. Yeah, no, because it does. That is an interesting thing I hadn't thought of. Is she does teach other people, which you would think she would.
Yeah.
They would then learn the language, because that's the idea. Is that the language, when you learn the language and you start thinking in the language, you start thinking non-linearly in terms of, you start perceiving the future because you no longer think in a linear time.
Which is also why I think that parallel universes are a thing with this time frame.
Yeah.
Because if she already knew, like, the information given to her in the future from
Right.
the general, why couldn't she just use that on herself in the past beforehand?
I think the idea, let me try to explain it. I think the idea, I know when you start messing with time, it becomes messy. It becomes wibbly wobbly.
Timey-wimey.
And timey-wimey. I think the idea is that it's a fucking movie, Kyle, and it's beautiful. And Amy Adams loves her daughter.
Holy shit. No. Wait. Oh, okay. Whoa, hang on. What if she taught her daughter how to read time like that?
Then her daughter would know she was dead.
And then she has a disease. What if she learned in the future how to cure disease? Does that kind of subvert the whole thing? We're thinking too much about this. But no, this is the problem when you introduce time travel, especially with how they do it. Yeah. This isn't like Back to the Future where they're like, this is too dangerous, we gotta destroy the DeLorean. You can't control you can't shut off, once you learn how to think in time, you can't shut that off.
No. So here's the thing. Maybe she knows, maybe this answers the question. Maybe she realizes she can't teach other people, that she shouldn't. And then she doesn't. So then it ends with her. Although
if these motherfucking jackass aliens who want to teach people time travel, basically, go to another species and they're like, hey, this is how time works.
Yeah.
Do this time thing.
Yeah.
And also, why are they not beyond, because they're able to communicate through emotions pretty much, right? Like that's their language.
It's kind of what it sounds like. They make it sound like they complex, like feelings are in like, basically is kind of the idea.
These weird squid things.
The squid ink things we didn't talk about that, but and I guess it is kind of spoiled. I don't think in any of the trailers that they actually showed the aliens.
There was the hand, but
there's one shot, but even then you don't know what that is. And then I was like, oh, they're like giant squids. Interesting. At first I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. But then I liked it. I thought it worked. But initially I was like, oh, they're just like fucking weird squid hands, people.
Once again, and they wouldn't need to teach anybody anything because they would have already fixed it because they can already perceive. Why would they need to do that if they could just think and stuff and things happen? Is this beyond the scope of theirs? How would they know in the future if something was wrong? This exceeded their lifespan? Is there somebody who's old enough to know that? Is somebody who's old enough to? If so, why couldn't they fix it in the past? Then to make sure that they would have to do it in the future, and then they would have to go to Amy Adams and teach her how to fuck up time too.
Because quantum mechanics.
Once again, time travel is always messy in movies.
It is always messy. I fully agree that I cannot disagree with you that if you look at it like that, and I like to do that with movies. I don't think you should just give them a pass because they're pretty or that they have a fun message. I think it's worth it to do what you just did there.
Yeah.
But
once again, I'm not discrediting this film as a film. As a film, it's beautiful.
Yes.
As an abstract idea, it's kind of clumsy.
Yeah. Now, I would. Okay, we have to get a physics person. We're gonna get on the horn with we're gonna get Neil deGrasse Tyson to go tweet about this movie and see what he has to say about the time travel in this movie or the time perception in this movie. But I think it would be interesting because you're not wrong. You're right. It gets messy as shit. But it also might work. I don't know.
Hawkeye in this film.
Yeah.
What does he do?
He's a physicist.
What does he do though?
He's a physicist.
But what does he do?
He's there to physicist.
He does one thing.
He gets Amy Adams pregnant.
He does two things really. He's like, this symbol for time is everywhere, and then he fucks Amy Adams.
Yeah.
But like, I'm just like, he's outside of that. To me, he was indistinguishable from anybody else on that base.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was a physicist, but he didn't seem any
Like-
smarter than any of the rest of them. They
this-
said he's like the premier physicist. But...
And what was it? Theoretical physics with chaos theory.
Yeah.
He's literally Jeff Goldblum.
Drip of water on your hand. Runs down that.
Butterfly died in China.
This is actually a nitpick I had with the movie, and it bothered me early, and I was able to put it away. But they get there, and so they get Amy Adams to. They need her because she's like a leading linguist, basically.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Are you talking about the Forrest Whitaker scene in The Office?
I was confused. One, I was just confused what she meant. Or what the hell, because she like won't go. They're like, you can't come. You have to translate it from here. And she's like, okay, whatever. And then they're like, well, fine, we're gonna go get this other guy. And she goes, ask him this question.
What is
the Sanskrit word for this? And then he says it to her. Like he comes back later, and she's like, what did he say? And he's like, he meant war, and I didn't get that.
It's meant like,
it's like
a volley of cows or something.
Or like
that.
a squabble over cattle or something. I don't know. Anyways, I didn't understand.
Whenever that first scene when he goes in and is like, we got this alien thing, and he's like, can you translate? What
I know. He's like, can you translate it?
It's a fucking alien language.
She's like, no. but the other thing that annoyed me for a little bit is that I was like, okay, I get that they're making sounds, and they're like, well, we got to try to communicate with them and to figure out their language, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure, but I'm like, because they set up this sort of back and forth between her and Jeremy Renner, who's a physicist, and they're like, I'm like, everything I've read, and I'm physics and aliens and that sort of thing. Not aliens, but like physics and science is like a pet hobby of mine. And everything I've ever read about and heard people talk about when we meet aliens eventually, we're gonna try to talk to them with math. That is how, because math is a universal language.
That's not a good idea.
Well, what do you mean it's not a good idea?
Well, I mean, like, what if their interpretation of things is like? I understand the whole idea of quantities and qualities and stuff, but when it comes to explaining mathematics the way we interpret it, I mean, that's like explaining what flying is to like a being that's underwater.
I don't think so. I don't think it is. So? I think, and that's kind of what bothered me is like, to me, language is much more human-centric than math.
Yeah, I agree with you.
To the point where it's like, if we're going to talk to fucking squid aliens from another fucking dimension or whatever the fuck these are, math still is going to exist. Math is math. We know, I mean, math is the base universal language. And physicists in the comments come shit on me. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate. That most likely, if we're going to try to initially communicate with somebody, we're going to do it through math. And it a little bothered me that they were like, Amy Adams was like, I'm going to decipher their squid ink. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to...
That is stupid.
I don't know if you're going to be able to talk to them any quicker than we would if we were somehow be able to, communicate through like prime numbers or some shit like that. That's kind of how it's going to happen.
How do you explain things through prime numbers, though? Like... This is my problem with mathematics. Is like, how do you explain ideas through math?
You don't initially. You don't. I think the idea is that, you don't. But initially, to get on the same page, math is the easiest way to sort of establish a...
Understanding like this quantity, and to me, is the same quantity to you.
Yeah, right.
Which is the whole... I get that whole point.
I don't know. That's just what like I said, from what extent of what I've read. There's a reason that what we sent out on the fucking Voyager was a bunch of fucking math equations and shit like that, and pictures, and... Anyways, we're getting way off topic.
Arrival.
Anyways, it's great. Go see Arrival. And until next time, keep watching movies, especially Arrival, in theaters now across this country.
Maybe not a few months from now, because then this will be dated.
Yes.
So just watch it now.
Literally now.
But not then.
And then go rent it.
And then if it is then think of it back then, and you'll be able to watch it then, because you can tell yourself to watch it. Yeah, exactly.
So you can just
watch
watch
it. If you haven't seen it then, you can tell yourself to see it in the past, because then you've already seen it in the future.
Yes.
I think.
Yes. Also support us on Patreon. Bye!